Okay, thank you. We're ready.
Ready, Mayor.
I call to order March 18th, 2025 regular meeting at the Whittier City Council at 10 minutes after 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin tonight's meeting, please note that digital copies of the packet are available on our website. A QR code is provided just outside the door or in the top left corner of the YouTube video. Open your phone's camera and scan the code and access the packet. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shen? I see that Mr. Shen is virtually present, but maybe not able to respond. Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. McAlto? Absent. Mr. Pinkush?
Here.
Mr. Denmark?
Here.
Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Mr. Mayor?
Here.
You have a quorum.
I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to excuse Renner from tonight's meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay.
Voting on the motion to excuse Renner McAlto from tonight's meeting, Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Denmark,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Shen. He did, but he is back. Hold on a moment. Mr. Shen, how do you vote?
I missed. What are we voting on right now?
Apologies. We are voting on the motion whether or not to excuse Renner McAlto from tonight's meeting.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the motion passes and Renner McAlto is excused from tonight's meeting.
Citizens' comments on any agenda item except those scheduled for public hearing are welcome at this time. Those who have signed in will be given the first opportunity to speak. Please note that it is not a time for dialogue. It is a time for you to speak and the council to listen. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed in?
Yes, Miss Kelly Bender.
Good evening. I'm here with my Whittier Chamber of Commerce hat on, and tomorrow here in council chambers from 4 to 6 p.m. we'll be having our Whittier TBMP meeting. This is our meeting to get together, look over the program. We've made a few changes and a couple of additions, but it's public comment time if anybody else wants to add anything or change anything or make any suggestions or just become more familiar with the program. Please join us here. A lot of you maybe have not been part of the process, and it would be really great to see you even just poke your head in and see what's going on. We have until the end of the month to take any additions or changes, and then by April 6th, we will be putting it out there, and the big kickoff is at the Natural History Symposium here on May 13th. We're asking businesses to sign on and be a part of the TBMP and train their employees. And this is really a good opportunity. If you have any comments, suggestions, or want to see what the process is like, I hope you'll join us tomorrow. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, no one else is signed in.
Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak? Hearing none. I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda and consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Discussion? Hearing none?
Voting on the motion to approve tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Denmark,
Yes.
Mr. Shen, Mr. Shen, are you still with us? Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes, and tonight's agenda and consent agenda are approved. On tonight's consent agenda are the approval of the January 21st, 2025 regular meeting minutes and the non-objection of Sportsman's Inn alcohol license renewal.
At this time, does anyone wish to declare a substantial financial interest in a matter appearing on the agenda? Okay. Moving on to presentations and reports.
Mayor, if I can ask, item 2, the AML appreciation for community support. Unfortunately, they're waiting for a barge to come in, so we would like to press that to next month so that we can make sure that they're present for it. So I just want to say that now before we start the presentations.
That'll save us some excitement for next month.
That's right. That's right. So I can start with the presentation. It's really my great honor to start this tonight because, as you all know, a little over 2 years ago, we hired Shelby Carlson as our city clerk. And just to give you a little bit of background, when I helped do that interview, I remember writing down on the paper that this is going to be a future master clerk. And with that being said, it is extremely humbling in knowing that we have a certified clerk tonight that took 2 years, almost to the day, to get her certifications. And so it is with really great honor that our community has such a great influence when it comes to Shelby as being part of our team and being able to help us move into the future of what city government looks like and protect our ability for our records and just everything that she offers on a team level basis. I know I do this with all of my employees. I am really, really proud of every single one of them. But Shelby, I'm especially proud of you because it is not an easy task to become a certified clerk. It is not an easy task to have to deal in a world where you sometimes have to toe the line and you have to put people in their places. And I'm just really, really proud of what you've brought to the city and what you've given each one of us as staff members and citizens. So it is with really great honor that I say that tonight, Shelby is a certified municipal clerk, and we are very, very proud of her.
I said I was going to embarrass you. That's my wife! Yeah!
Congratulations, Shelby. Moving on to presentation from the Alaska Railroad Terminal Master Plan Update.
Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Greer, Elizabeth Greer from Alaska Railroad. Been up here before. This is kind of a reminder of what we've done so far and to update the city before we release publicly our master plan, our draft master plan. So some of you will have already heard of this before, but hopefully we'll be able to give you an insight of where we're at and where we're going from here. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So again, we have just a reminder for those out there. Originally, we had started with looking at the waterfront and some of the changes that needed to occur and realized that the terminal is really interconnected between the movements of the operations of the rail and of transportation and the both for transportation internally and externally to the city. So we had went forward with a master plan with a MARAD grant to identify what really we felt was the best way to move forward with the development of the marine terminal, or the railroad reserve as the right-of-way is actually called. It's, again, a roadmap to our future on where we would like it to go ultimately. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the reserve, this is a part of a contingent piece of right-of-way that is part of our marine operations. It's an interface. It's an intermodal face where, as we all know, the barge comes in, brings us our cargo, and disseminates into between rail and roadway. And it all happens on this piece of property called the Railroad Reserve. A lot of challenges out there, and again, very interconnected. So as part of the grant, this whole property becomes the terminal as we're looking at it, and looks as how this will move forward to better improve operations and make sure we continue serving the Alaska community from rail through Whittier. Next slide, please. So as we all know, we've got challenges on the interface between the rail and the road crossings. We've got passengers in the summertime that come through, both with the freight rail and the passenger rail. Physically, the passengers walking around, passengers coming through the city, wanting to cut through the yard. We've got security and access issues. And the biggest issue right now is the fact that some of these facilities out there are circa World War II. I mean, that seawall out there really is ancient, and we need to keep the marine facilities functional, to keep the terminal functional. So we've been moving forward on these to look at what's the most efficient way to develop this ultimate plan and what the terminal should look like. And we brought on HDR as a consultant with a lot of background in rail, intermodal facilities, and transportation to assist with this. Next slide. So at this point, I'm going to introduce the folks from HDR, bring Tony up here to talk a little bit about where we have gone for some of our concepts. Tony?
Thanks, Liz. My name is Tony Hafner. I'm the Deputy Project Manager for HDR for the Whittier Terminal Master Plan. I've been here a couple times now, and good to see some familiar faces. Most of these up here are things that we've talked about before. As you can kind of see, there's a wide variety of projects that need to occur in order to fully visualize this or realize the master plan in its entirety. Important to note that these are concept plans, right? None of these are actual projects yet. But these are ideas to get us to that ultimate objective of upgrading the existing facilities, modernizing the existing facilities, and making sure it's a continued functioning facility in the future. These projects range from terminal track realignments within the yard, extending a second main track out to the tunnel, new passenger boarding platforms to provide better access for the cruise ship passengers, as well as removing some of the conflicts between freight rail and passenger rail operations. We have come up with a proposed grade separation concept that occurs west of the existing crossing that we presented last time, and we'll be presenting more of that at the next phase of this project. Upgrading the berthing facilities, the waterfront infrastructure, some snow storage improvements, and some security improvements. Next slide, please. So some of those things may be a little hard to see in this photo for those not looking at a screen up close, but we've spent a lot of time in the last couple months here really focusing on optimizing that terminal, the yard track layouts right now. That's kind of been our main focus since the last time we presented here. We've come up with a couple different options since then. This is option D at this point. So A, B, C, D, we're on our fourth option here, but we think we're getting to a good point. It'll increase some working track lengths, increase storage for containers, add some side ramp loading capabilities. And one of the big things is we've been looking at truck movements in and out of yard as well, and how better to get that flow of traffic through, especially with some of the conflicts near the existing ferry terminal. How can we rearrange some of the flow through the yard to improve truck traffic? Next slide, please. And then west of the yard area, between the west end of the yard and the tunnel entrance, I kind of mentioned it, looking at adding a second track all the way out to the tunnel. That'll help with staging of trains. It gives them a lot of additional space to store cars and make train movements outside of the crossing or west of the crossing. We have looked at a grade crossing concept that tries to utilize the existing landscape to the extent possible, minimizing costs and moving it west of the existing at-grade crossing, and kind of like an entrance to the city almost. Is kind of how we've been looking at it. We'll be interested to get others' takes on that. And then, like I mentioned before, new passenger loading tracks, dedicated areas in that passenger loading area to help passenger movement and pedestrian movement through that area, make it safer for everyone as well. Next slide, please. So as far as schedule goes, we have been working these past several months since the last presentation to develop a draft plan. Before, we were just kind of presenting the concepts, but we really have dug into the details now, put together a full plan, and that's going to be presented at a public meeting. And that public meeting is going to be taking place next month, April 15th. Once we get that public comment, get to the public comment period, receive your comments, take that, make any edits that we need to make. We'll be submitting the plan to MARAD for review and approval. Important to note that MARAD is the funding agency here and have the ultimate say. And then any projects that ultimately end up in the plan still need to go through their individual process to actually be implemented, and would need future approvals, future agreements, future permitting to make any of those happen. So these are just concepts at this point. Next slide, please. I'm going to bring Julie up to talk about that public comment period.
Hi, everyone. Julie Jesson with HDR, and also good to see you again. Thanks for having us tonight. Tonight is really high level, and I recognize that it's a sneak peek. Just like when I was a kid, there were always few scenes that would kind of clue you in on what to expect next week. This is kind of the few scenes for what we'll be doing next month. We will be having a public open house here at the council chambers on the 15th from 4 to 6 with a more in-depth presentation at 5 o'clock that really runs through a little bit more detail on some of these concepts. But there will be a 30-day public comment period. We will be putting this plan, the full draft plan, and all the appendices and all the ideas on the railroad's website. I will say, while we showed you that option D, the draft plan includes a number of different scenarios, both for the water side and the landslide activities. These are concepts, these are ideas. And with the public comment period, what is really helpful is if from your perspective and from the community's perspective, we hear how this looks to you as far as efficiency for freight movement. And again, this is about the freight, rail, and marine nexus. How does the rail side work with the marine side to keep freight and passengers moving through safely, effectively, quickly, hopefully, and getting through. So how does this plan look from the community side as far as efficiency, from your perspective? Is it something that looks kind of sustainable? Does this make sense? Does this pattern or this flow or these ideas for projects seem to work from the community perspective, knowing that the railroad has to keep things moving? Looking at that intermodality and how patterns within the community work, especially within the summer. How does that look to you? So we will be having this open house. We'll be doing a presentation. We'll be having that 30-day comment period. There's a web or an email address on the slide here, and we encourage all comments come through that mechanism so I can track everything and mark down what comments were received. But this is going to be something that we really look forward to your comments, because that will help influence how the draft moves into that final element that gets submitted to MIRAD. And again, there are certain grant requirements that go along with our MIRAD grant. We need to pay attention to those, but having that community involvement is very important to the ultimate success of this plan. Again, the plan is ideas, they're concepts. Nothing's been funded yet. Nothing's been designed yet. There still may be environmental documents and permits to go through. So this is a long-range plan that identifies and prioritizes projects from a 5 to 10 year perspective, but also from a 10 to 20 year perspective. You guys live in Whittier. You know what's going on in your community. Does these projects make sense to you from a community perspective, with knowing that this is about that rail freight marine nexus and passenger freight or passenger rail? So with that, I'll just say, are there any questions that we can answer now, knowing this is a sneak peek and we're just teasing you really tonight and hoping you'll come to our meeting next month?
So I didn't see the DeLong dock on there. Is that going to be part of, it currently is an intermodal aspect.
It is not, but I will let Liz answer that.
DeLong Dock, we showed it in there with the concept that the city has to replace it. It has not been part of our study as an option to make it either go away or change it. To answer your question, it is not part of the study. It's included in there, shown based on your concept of it being replaced. That actually is part of our terminal, because right now the ITB dock is breasting up against that. So we are very supportive of keeping that facility operational and making sure it maintains the ITB operations in the terminal.
I see the railroad as an essential partner in getting that grant and funding for the replacement of the DeLong dock. And I heard just a brief mention of cruise ships. Are you planning on creating a wharfage area for cruise ships?
Right now, not particularly. The business aspect of it, I'm going to see how I can put this without getting into too much trouble. I know what I'll do. Before the marginal wharf went down, the marginal wharf could take cruise ships in it. Right now, the master plan is not anticipating cruise ships to come to a new marginal wharf. However, business opportunities at a new marginal wharf could be explored to see what could be incorporated into that.
And a question about the marginal wharf.
Mhm.
How did it get its name?
So marginal wharves, it's kind of the lower 48. In the lower 48, Alaska is great. We call everything a dock. It makes things easier. It's the ITB dock. It's whatever. In the lower 48, a pier goes into the water and a wharf goes alongside the waterfront. And marginal means it's going alongside. So it's kind of redundant when you say a marginal wharf. As a matter of fact, some of the folks we were talking to in our team, it's like, that's what we call that uniquely here, a marginal wharf. I'm not sure of other places in Alaska that we use that expression, but it is pretty common in the lower 48. Mhm.
Are there any more questions?
Mayor, can we just make sure that no one online, none of the council members have any questions?
Dave Pincush,
Nope, I'm good.
Wagner,
Nope.
and Victor. You're here with us.
Oh, can you hear me?
Sorry. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm struggling with my connection or here. I didn't get to see the overall map, but I guess a big concern or questions I have is going back to the presentation is the when you mentioned like connectivity and traffic flow and stuff. Whittier with its size, a lot of people get around in many different ways, like vehicles, walking, bike, and stuff. And just wanted to make sure that we're thinking about like making sure that we have that overpass, but also other alternatives for pedestrians to I guess pedestrian crossings between the existing underpass, pedestrian underpass, and this proposed overpass. If there's something in there too, if there's nothing, my concern is like if that would kind of discourage people who choose to walk or ride their bikes. But I know you're in the planning stages, but I just want to make sure that that remains a major component of your planning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Definitely, we have been thinking about how passenger movements or pedestrian movements and multimodal movements, even like bikes as well, can get through that highly congested area safely. And safety is the big keyword there. So one of the things that we've been looking at is we're calling it a salmon walk between the parking area south of the crossing that would go underneath those existing rail bridges along the side of the road there, and then back up as soon as you get under those as a way to safely cross that area without having to go all the way up and over the grade separation. There will be pedestrian access along that grade separation for emergency purposes, but also including the salmon walk as a way to freely move pedestrians between the waterfront and the city side to make sure there's an evacuation route, but also to eliminate crossing over active tracks as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, a question. There is currently just getting underway a transportation master plan, and it doesn't look like that any thinking there has fallen its way into your master plan, but it's relatively evident that there will be some rail running down to the Norwegian terminal. Will that fall into master plan thinking, or is that going to be a separate thought?
Succinctly, a separate thought. In more detail, though, the transportation plan is going to look at transportation in Whittier as a whole. And probably there's folks here that can explain a little bit more about all the detail of the Whittier transportation plan. What our grant is actually constrains us to do is to look at a marine facility and its input. So we are actually controlled by what is the terminal as to what is covered in our grant. The piece of property, it goes to the tunnel. So the rail actually is part of the terminal right there. We hope the rail transportation, the transportation plan will find a lot of the information we've gathered and our concepts as a starting point, so they don't have to, a lot of the other work we've done can be utilized into that. And we anticipate working with the folks doing that. I think with the time lap now, we actually did try to kind of hold off a little bit so they could be a little closer. We had to move forward. And at this point, we do have a lot of information we feel is going to be helpful to move the transportation plan faster. And we have already made the effort to just a quick discussion with DOT and the Dow team, here's what we have, what can we give you? And they gave us a list of things that they thought would be helpful. And that includes like some of the information that the community has provided in the meeting minutes before. So we're collecting those. Some information, some technical stuff in terms of transportation movements on rail, and a couple of layouts, etc. So we will share what we can with them to make their job easier. But going back to answer your question, it is focused on the marine terminal.
I will just close out and say, with our public meeting coming up next month, we will be sending out postcards to all PO Box holders in Whittier, as well as rail leaseholders and others. We'll be asking flyers be distributed throughout the community. We'll be putting ads in the Anchorage Daily News and the Turnagain newspaper just to raise awareness about this. But I would hope, and I know you will be as excited to attend this meeting as we are to be presenting the information. So I look forward to seeing you next month, and hope you will encourage your friends and neighbors and residents and businesses to participate as well. This will be a really great project. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Kaya Holland on?
Hi, this is Kai. Are you able to hear me okay? The sound that I'm hearing is broken up sometimes.
Yes, we can hear.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. So I'm Kai Holland. I'm the representative for House District 9, and I'm down in Juneau and unable to get to join you today, but enjoyed the meetings I was able to attend last summer and the fall. I just wanted to give you a brief update of some of the activities here and then see if there are any questions. If anyone wants to reach me, of course, you can reach out to the House District 9 office here in Juneau. You'll find me on the legislative website at akledge.gov, and I'd be happy to contact anyone or meet individually. Your city clerk, Shelby, has my contact information. So briefly, I was able to put in the CAPSIS requests that you had filed in there and advocating for those, although at this point nothing has happened on the capital budget, so I'll continue to watch for that. In particular, I know there was support for the ambulance request that you have, but again, there's going to be a very tight fiscal situation, and we're not very optimistic about capital projects, but I am watching for your projects and doing what I can to potentially get some funding in there. The big issue, of course, has been the school funding, House Bill 69 that passed the state house last week. And I just want to mention, I had a great visit here in Juneau by some of your students from Whittier that came to Juneau to help advocate for school funding. And I enjoyed seeing the folks from the Whittier school there. We're continuing to work on the operating budget, and that will be ready in a couple weeks with more details then. I'm also working on a citation to specifically recognize the Whittier Police and the EMS for the service that they provide to the Upper Turnagain Arm communities and the highway there, and particularly in response to the tragic crash that occurred a month ago, and the response that was provided by the Whittier public safety individuals there. And I'll be getting that finished up and share that with you when that's ready, but that will be a state initiative recognizing the contributions of your group there. And then I'll just finish up and say I'm doing some advocacy for the ferry system, watching the railroad issue and support when it's time for the railroad transfer legislation that's required, and of course watching for the DOT project. So I appreciate your patience with this long distance connection. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them, but I appreciate a couple minutes of your time tonight.
Thank you, sir, for the update.
You bet. Then I'll put my contact information in the chat. Have a good evening, and I'll stick around for a while.
Okay, moving forward to the mayor's report.
Oh, excuse me, Mayor. This is Victor. I missed agenda item number 6 when I was having trouble with connections. I was wondering if I could make proclaim a conflict of interest.
Wasn't that in consent?
No, I believe you read that.
I know, but he wasn't able to communicate his possible conflict. Renner, that was handled in the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, he's hoping to declare a potential conflict of interest
Okay,
that the council can then decide whether or not it is a conflict of interest.
okay, I'm all ears.
Okay. No objection of sportsmen's and alcohol license renewal. I know that was on the consent agenda. I missed that, but just to make a declaration that is a family, my family member, my parents' business, and I want to declare a potential conflict of interest there.
Well, you were actually very silent during that, so we'll take that as it is. But does council wish to weigh in on this?
Since Mr. Shen has declared a conflict of interest, your code does dictate that then the council will vote as to whether or not he has a conflict. So at this time, it would be prudent, unless there's more discussion, to entertain a motion that either Mr. Shen has a substantial conflict of interest in item number, let's see, item number 9C2, the non-objection of sportsmen's in alcohol license renewal.
So I would ask for a motion.
So I'll make a motion to vote on whether or not Victor Shen has a conflict of interest on,
So I don't really,
say, yeah, and just to be clear, the vote would be no for, as if he's not in conflict, correct?
Right, that is correct. And if I might add, Mr. Mayor, the definition of a substantial conflict of interest only covers immediate family members, which is you, yourself, your spouse, or your children. So in this case, your code does advise that parents are not considered, darn it, I can't remember the exact term, but they don't count as a conflict of interest.
well, that just makes it much simpler. I was going to end up asking questions I wasn't comfortable asking. So are there any further discussions having heard that?
Other than it comes up every year and the answer is always no.
So hearing no further discussion, I'd ask for a vote.
Voting on the motion, voting on the question, does Mr. Shen have a substantial financial conflict of interest in item 9C2? Mr. Dickinson,
No.
Mr. Denmark,
No.
Mr. Pinkush,
No.
Mr. Wagner,
No.
Mr. Shen,
Can I vote on this?
technically. Yes, you do need to vote, Mr. Shen. How do you vote, Mr. Shen?
That seems
Doesn't
so
matter what you
strange.
say, Victor, it's still no.
Okay, no.
And Mr. Mayor,
No.
The motion fails, and Mr. Shen is determined not to have a substantial financial conflict of interest in item 9C2. If I might also add, I just want to say as the clerk that I really appreciate, Mr. Shen, you declaring the conflict. It is always best to over-declare, declare if you think there might be the appearance of impropriety. And it is just so much better for the council to say, nope, there is no conflict of interest here. So thank you, Mr. Shen, for declaring, even though it feels probably a little silly.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, moving on to mayor's report. I'm very happy to report significant progress regarding the City of Whittier and Alaska Railroad MOU with regards to land acquisition of master lease property. Council unanimously voted to remove all fee simple land owned by the City of Whittier from the MOU. Council was challenged by tight timelines to get the MOU in front of the Alaska State Legislature this session. I feel this process underlines the importance of updating our almost 6-year-old comprehensive plan. The head of the bay lands have undergone huge changes. The Forest Service removed 250 acres of fee simple land from our community, and the City of Whittier added the 56-acre tank farm. The community has not been allowed to bring forward their collective voice to articulate their wishes, desires, and dreams for the land use at the head of the bay. Whittier is now on track to become the primary landowner at the head of the bay. We are playing catch up to the railroad. They have spent years planning their next development phase. It's time for us to begin that process. Thank you. So, Peter, do you have a report?
Sure, thank you. And to follow up the mayor's thought here, currently there are a number of plans and studies in progress. We heard about the railroad master plan going into a public input period. We have a waterfront development plan that started meeting just before the new year. And there's a transportation master plan that also began just before the new year. And there is significant mutual inclusivity with all of these studies. And it's really important that people find a way to get their opinions and their wishes forward through these processes. The working parts of all these studies need to be found a way to work together. And from we're a far cry from that right now. So anyway, my point is this waterfront development plan is going to be ongoing for, I understand, probably 2 years. No? Okay, well, all the more reason to jump in early and often. The transportation master plan, I heard somewhere between 2 and maybe 5 years.
No, so all of these, as you're saying, just to help Vice Mayor, your master transportation plan is a year in the making. So they're doing their portions and doing the meetings and then and starting their process. So, they'll create the data. So by this time next year, you'll have that plan. That's the goal with that. The waterfront economic development plan is also at the phase where, I would say by the end of this summer, you will have that plan in your hands, so that they're waiting to take certain bits out of the other plans, right? But at the same time, they're still moving on those timelines.
Very good. So in the net result of these studies is the council, the citizenry, and the commissions are going to be asked to make decisions that are going to reach well into the future. Decades in front of us, and long-term decisions are about to be made. If there was ever a time to start paying attention and getting involved, now is it. Thank you.
Do we have does the city manager, the city attorney have anything that she would like to put or speak out of with regard to her report?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I do plan on being there in person at the next meeting. We did decide to put the attorney report in your packet so you can review it and make sure you have any questions and are ready for a more detailed discussion on it at the next meeting. But I can take any questions anybody might have, of course. And we will have some other questions for you regarding potential administrative legal action on a couple issues in April. So that there will be a more in-depth discussion during the April meeting. So just to put that on everyone's radar.
So I had one question, Holly. Have you heard back from the FOIA requests that you filed?
Well, that is exactly what I'm alluding to. We did file 2 requests. We filed one public records request and it was outright rejected. It was a very detailed request. It covered a lot of ground, a lot of different records, pretty much anything you can imagine we requested. And so to get a flat out rejection was unexpected, highly unusual, and in my legal opinion, suspect. We then we filed another public records request. And so that initial request was filed from the city. The second request was filed from our law firm as the city's representative. That requested a very similar request, but worded in a different way. That one was also rejected for different reasons. And so we have until the due date's in May to file a notice of appeal. And that's an administrative process that's required before you go forward and file anything with the court, right? We have to exhaust our administrative remedies. In April, we'll be coming to council. We've received preliminary approval from the administration, from the city manager, to start to prepare a notice of appeal. But the next step is in April, we'll be coming to you asking you for approval to file that notice of appeal and take the next step to get and secure those records. So I guess you now have the update. That's the update we're going to provide in April. The only difference will be is we will have completed the preliminary research so that we can get that filed if that's council's wish. So the action item will come to you in April.
Thank you, Holly. So, Jackie, do you have something you would like to report?
I do, Mayor. As anybody can see, we have an extra body at the dais, and I want to start out with my city manager report, introducing our new assistant city manager, Addison Spanford. Here she is, everyone. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Addison. She brings an extensive experience in comprehensive and strategic planning, project management, and community development with a strong background in transportation, housing, infrastructure, and projects across Alaska. She has worked with local governments, tribal aid organizations, federal agencies, leading to long-term planning initiatives that aligned with state and federal funding priorities. Her expertise is in grant writing, contract management, and stakeholder coordination, that will be instrumental for us and key for our key infrastructure and economic development projects that we have forward, including all of the plans that we have running right now. With her leadership in strategic planning, we will be able to strengthen our ability to secure our funding, manage our complex projects, and implement long-term initiatives that will support Whittier's future growth. And we are just really excited to have her added to our team. You know, it's one more person that we know that we're already working together. It's her second day, and I have her drinking from the fire hose. And look at this, she's not drowning. So we're doing good. So I'm just going to put the mic over to her just so she can introduce herself also.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to join the team. I'm really excited. Jackie and a lot of the directors, we've worked together for the past 3 years on several grant initiatives and the planning efforts. I'm really excited. I come from Ketchikan, that's my background, so I'm very used to small communities, especially with tourism and fishing and this type of environment. So I've worked all over the state in many rural communities, helping secure funding and deal with some pretty complex projects. So I'm really excited to be a part of the team, and I mean, you have a great team here, so looking forward to it.
Now oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mayor.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
For the other portions of my CMR, I do want to bring attention to the fact that we're going over the next month. I'll be working with Mayor Blair and Councilmember Shen for our future scheduled May trip to Washington, D.C. So we'll hit the ground on that so that we can be very prepared to advance our priorities and at the federal level. I want to talk a little bit about the community health fair that is coming up, and I'm going to sort of roll it over to Chief Cates. As everyone knows, if you don't, you should. We're working on having a community health fair on April 10th, and I'm just going to have Mr. Cates give a little brief background of what he's putting together on that level.
Thank you, Jackie. As Jackie said, we're planning a health, safety, and job fair on April 10th. It'll be 1 to 6 p.m. We're working with the state of Alaska public health nurse that comes out for this region. Her name's Kumi, great person. As we get more commitment to this, we'll have flyers, we'll have social media posts. We've got Girdwood will be involved, their health clinic. We'll have all kinds of stuff. We've probably 30 different agencies have been reached. So we're just waiting, like I said, we're just waiting on commitment back from them. And once we get that, then we'll post that accordingly.
And I just want to add to that. I'm going to end mine on a little bit of a somber note. I think it is really important for everyone in our community to understand how that cancer has affected every single one of people in our lives. So it's really important for us as a government organization and even just as citizens to make sure that we give the ability for anybody to have the checks that they need. And I'm just saying it right now, if there's anybody that needs any help when it comes to any type of cancer screening, please just reach out and contact me. I will be more than happy to help you. So with that being said, I'm sorry, I'm emotional. I just believe that, we all have somebody that is really being affected by cancer right now. So if you could just please don't hesitate. I will help you if you need.
Are there any questions from council for any of the directors? Hearing none. Guess we're moving into public ordinance 2025-001. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to open ordinance 2025-001 for public hearing.
I am opening the public hearing. Oh, do I have a second, please?
Mr. Mayor, procedurally, you do not need motions to open the public hearing. You, as the mayor, open the public hearing. We close the public hearing when we've finished, and then we entertain the motion to adopt or amend or.
Thank you. I am opening the public hearing for ordinance 2025-001 at 5 minutes after 8. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed in to speak at this time?
Miss Kelly Bender.
So first of all, I had noticed that maybe 2 weeks ago, there was supposed to be a work session on this, and I was looking forward to that because I had a couple things I wanted to bring up, and I actually have worked with Chris and talked to Chris about a couple of things on here, but I really wanted to bring it up in front of the council so that you can understand some of the situations that that we're still questioning the tax or how to address the tax, or sorry, the fee. One thing, the recommendations here in this ordinance of changing the reporting, we appreciate very much. That's what we're more in tune to from how we reported the PTBT in the past. So thank you for hearing our concerns about that and following through with this ordinance. And some of the questions that I've brought to Chris, and I just want to make sure that the council knows that these are some of the issues that we face in the businesses. Before with tax exempt, and when I talk about those folks didn't pay the tax, and tax exempt, I'm talking about schools, churches, scouts, and then also government. And we do a lot of business with all of those people. So I can see putting this fee on working with USGS or the Forest Service, and they're going to say, well, we don't pay fees. So how to answer that? But school groups, and we're just getting into our spring trips, and we have a bunch of trips scheduled with high schools. We take them out for marine biology trips. We charge a very small fee for this because we believe in education. We think it's important. We like to get these kids out into the sound and into the wilderness. And we think it's important when you add another $8 to kids who are fundraising to participate in these programs, churches who are fundraising, scouts who are fundraising. At $8 really does make a difference to their total package. So I know that Chris is working on it, I have talked to her, but I just wanted to make sure that the council, and this is stuff that I'd hoped that we could talk about in a work session. The other thing that I probably already know the answer to, but comps, sometimes we have a big group and their leader, after so many, we don't charge that leader sometimes, or sometimes we give away trips to the Sea Life Center or Heroes for Healthcare or for Rendezvous. So we're not collecting any money from those guests, but it's not perfectly clarified in here if we're not collecting a fee, are we still meant to collect the passenger transportation fee? So just looking for clarification on that. The other thing that I would like some clarification on, when all of this money was moved from the harbor to the harbor, and we have Lazy Otter and the Chamber, we've always been in favor of getting more money to the harbor because we feel like that is the heartbeat of this community. But with this new increased passenger fee, what is this money meant to be spent for? Because I think I was told today that it's not necessarily meant to be used for the services for the harbor users or the moorage users. So how do harbor users and moorage payers expect services to happen? Where does that come from? From our moorage payments? But I understood that, we understood that part of this was to help services and the things that we've been asking for a very long time. And we ask for them every time I stand here. You've heard us say bathrooms, garbage, shoveling, all of those things. We'd like to see a value for the money that we are spending. And We pay a lot of money to participate, to have our business operate in this community. We pay a lot of money in a lot of different ways. We started cruising February 27th, and we've already accumulated a pretty good amount of passenger transportation fees that will come to you. Would like to understand how those monies are being used. For those of us who work and operate, how does that benefit us? It should benefit us. There should be some value to us. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, no one else is signed in.
Okay, is there anybody here in the audience that would like to speak to this ordinance? Is there a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 2025-001?
Mr. Mayor, could you close the public hearing first officially?
If there is no further public comment, the public hearing for ordinance 2025-001 is closed at 11 minutes past 8. Is there a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 2025-001?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-001.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to adopt ordinance 2025-001. Chris, could you give us maybe review some of or answer some of the questions that were brought up tonight?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this ordinance is really to focus on two changes to the ordinance that council previously approved that implemented the new waterborne passenger fee. One of the, I think the strongest bits of feedback we got that our previous ordinance required businesses to submit manifests that would confirm the number of passengers they had on board. And businesses felt that that was just onerous. Some of them have, multiple boats going out per day, and some have many, many customers. And so producing those manifests and physically producing them and filing them with the return was deemed to be overly onerous on certain businesses. Obviously, they know that those records need to be made available to the city should we ask, but not requiring them to submit them seemed more business friendly. So that's one of the changes that's going to take effect if you approve this ordinance today. And then the second change is that although we haven't had this particular fee before, we did have PTBT, passenger transportation business tax. And for the most part, those customers, those businesses paid on a quarterly basis, although not all of them did. So we are asking council to allow those businesses, all businesses, to start off as quarterly payers. And then for those who fail to either report on time or pay on time or both, the administration has the flexibility through the city manager to require those businesses to file monthly for a set period of time until they can demonstrate timely filing, at which time they would be placed back into quarterly filing, which we have that same provision for our sales tax filers. So that's the purpose of the ordinance tonight. I have been asked a number of questions, some of which were asked. This ordinance does not provide exceptions to the payment of the fee. And that's typical of an impact fee. It's different than sales tax, for example, where certain entities were exempted from paying sales tax. But I have stated before, and I will state again, that if a business does have a group of folks they'd like to take out, like a school, and they would like to try to forego the fee, that would be a request that they would be able to make through the harbor master. And in most communities where that happens, there is some level of flexibility where the harbor itself will agree to make those fee payments on behalf of this particular type of group. So it's really at the discretion of the harbor master to come up with the general rules for that. And what I've typically seen is that it's limited to school groups. With respect to the churches, I guess it's arguable, but we would entertain at least some information about that, and that would kind of also play into our decision making. But what we did find on the sales tax end of things is oftentimes churches think that because they're churches, they're exempt from paying sales tax, and which is obviously true in the case of sales tax, but not all the activities that were being participated in were church activities. So it might just be a group of people from a church that are going out fishing, but it's not a church function, and they felt like they were tax exempt. So that's why I say we would want to kind of know the specifics of the situations and deal with those separately. But it's simplest to say we do not have exemptions. And that way everybody's treated the same. And in the case where the harbor master makes a decision that this group is something that he has developed an internal policy on, that he's willing to pay for those groups, he has the flexibility to do that. As to where the money goes, I'll remind the council that we've been working on a plan, I would say for 4 years, at least, to figure out how to fund replacement of a third of our boat harbor. We are at the point where without replacing that portion of the harbor, we will shut it down. I hate to remind people, but if you go down and lift up the plywood and you look down, you'll see the water. You won't see wood in some cases. So we were in a dire situation, as council knows, about the terrible condition of the harbor. So we decided to issue $4.5 million bonds because we were fortunate to be awarded a $4.5 million grant that required us to match 50-50. So the question became, how do we fund the $4.5 million? And so we decided that the best way to do it was to convert what used to be the PTBT tax into a waterborne passenger fee that would be dedicated to the harbor. So this is new money going to the harbor. This money used to, 100% of the money used to go to fund general government services that benefited the whole community. So police, fire, parks and rec, administration. That is a large pot of money, over $600,000 a year, that used to fund the general government. But council made a decision that the harbor was important enough to focus a new permanent revenue source for harbor infrastructure. So that 100% of the waterborne fee is going to harbor infrastructure, which is going to go directly to the Harbor MRF fund, because that major repair and replacement fund, its sole purpose is for repairing and replacing infrastructure. And then council, through our bond covenants, has decided to utilize that new revenue source to make our bond payments. And so though that will first and foremost pay for the bonds, and then whatever funding is left over will pay for additional repair and replacement of capital items in the boat harbor, which means anything with a cost exceeding $20,000. What that does then is, on the operational side, it frees up money that the harbor has had to pay in the past for all their capital needs. So in the past, the harbor didn't have this source of revenue, and so the moorage fees were all that was available to moorage, wharfage, and other fees were all that was available to pay not only the operating costs, but the capital costs. So there will be less pressure on rates in the harbor, given now that we have a dedicated revenue source to pay for the capital infrastructure. I'm not sure if I addressed all the questions, so if I didn't and council has a further question, feel free to ask, but hopefully I got the important ones.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions, any additional questions or discussion regarding this ordinance, council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I have a question probably for Chris, maybe for Harbor Master, but the Chris, you basically said there's no exceptions, but I would say that Kelly mentioned that some of her charters are discounted, others are free. by the Coast Guard definition, if it's free, it's not a charter. There has to be compensation for it to be charter. So I would suggest that if it's a free, if they're taking them free, that's the goodness of their heart. It's not a charter, and it wouldn't fall into this. That would be in my opinion from my experience with the Coast Guard. And so it would just be basically be a personal trip that they're funding through the business. So I guess I would ask how you feel on that one.
Councilmember Pincush through the mayor, the ordinance specifically says that the total amount of commercial recreational passenger fees for waterborne passengers shall be calculated based on the number of passengers reported and certified by the registered business as being present on the passenger manifest. So it doesn't talk about the payment of fees. If you're present on the charter, then the fee would be paid. And I would say that makes sense because this is an impact fee. So it isn't a tax on the value of the service. It's attempting to charge everyone similarly for their impacts to the infrastructure.
Well, let me throw out a different example then. If I am a charter boat, but I take my family out and I don't charge them, it's not a charter. So it would be personal. And I don't see it any different if they voluntarily take out a church group, that it's not personal. I don't see how it falls into the same realm, whether they're taking out family or whether they're taking out somebody else for free. It still doesn't, to me, it wouldn't fall into the category of a charter.
Councilmember Pincush through the mayor, I would argue that you taking your family is not a commercial recreational purpose. And the definition in our ordinance is commercial recreational purpose. So I don't think those are comparable according to the definition.
Are there any further questions? Kelly?
If you want to reopen public hearing, maybe that would be something that you would vote on, because that's out of the ordinary. So what you're voting on is to relax the rules to allow for another public hearing.
So, let me pass. I was going to ask. Hearing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Voting on the motion to adopt ordinance 2025-001, an ordinance amending sections 12.32.050, 12.32.060, and 12.32.140 to clarify reporting procedures and timelines for businesses registered under Chapter 12.32 and subject to the commercial recreational waterborne passenger fee. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Pincush.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and ordinance 2025-001 is adopted.
Okay, moving on to new business. I'd ask for a motion for resolution 2025-005.
I'll make a motion. Resolution 2025-005 to adopt.
Second.
Discussion?
Mayor,
Staff report?
do you want a staff report? I'll put that off to our finance director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a standard resolution that we ask the council to pass each year. We're required by state law to set the mill rate, and the Whittier Municipal Code establishes a maximum mill rate of 8 mills. And then we also, in the same resolution, for the sake of expediency, also set the date of equalization and the date when taxes become due, so that the public is aware of the deadline for filing appeals, should they have them, and then when those appeals will be heard, and then when taxes become delinquent. So this is something that we do each year. It just lays out the timeline. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-005, setting the mill rate levy at 8 mills, establishing the date of a Board of Equalization hearing, and the date when taxes become delinquent for the 2025 tax roll. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-005 is approved.
Okay. I'd ask for a motion for Resolution 2025-006.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution to approve Resolution 2025-006.
A second? Can we have a second?
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve Resolution 2025-006. Is there a staff report?
Mayor, if I can ask, if we can, when the motion is made or the request, can we have either myself or the clerk read what that title is? It's really good for your minutes. So I'm just going to read it really quick. The motion is to approve Resolution 2025-006, authorizing the city manager to accept grant funds in the amount of $320,000 from the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation Division of Water as a supplement funding to address the 301H waiver requirements and appropriating funds. And I will have our Public Works Director give you the staff report on it.
Good evening, Council. We've been working with ADEC and the EPA on a 301H renewal for our water discharge, or our wastewater discharge into the bay. Through various meetings with them, they took some empathy on the city of Whittier and our limited amount of funding. So they've helped us with this grant to develop 2 tech memos. One is to look at alternative alternates or potential costs for additional regulations that they're seeing in the other 301H small communities all over Southeast. They're currently working up here in South Central. The next tech memo that they will write is how to handle long-term solid matter in our treatment facility, a process and a procedure to get rid of the heavy solids. And the remaining funds were to be used as additional testing that is required through the 301H process. They're kind enough to extend it out probably about another 18 months because we're trying to get all of our stuff done. So they've done us a huge solid here, as well as USDA and EPA have helped us by providing us $1.5 million in funding for lift station number 5.
Very good. Is there any questions from the council? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-006, authorizing the city manager to accept grant funds in the amount of $325,000 from the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, Division of Water, as supplemental funding to address 301H waiver requirements and appropriating funds. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark.
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-006 is approved.
So we ended up reading that. This is just a refinement of our process, so please be patient with me. But we ended up reading that resolution twice. Is that what you want? Okay. So, Madam Clerk, would you please read Resolution 2025-007?
The next resolution is Resolution 2025-007, authorizing the city manager to accept grant funds in the amount of $37,791 from the State of Alaska Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, for the purpose of replacing obsolete mobile and portable radio systems and appropriating funds.
May I have a first and a second?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-007.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve Resolution 2025-007. Is there a staff report?
Yes, I will have our Public Safety Director give that staff report, Mayor.
Good evening. This is for a grant to replace our current handheld, our hand packs and mobile radios. It covers roughly a third of our hand packs and 90% or 10%. I'm sorry. The last 10% need one more mobile radio. A little bit about this. Our current radios are still functional at this point. I brought up in the last couple of years with ALMR, which is a radio frequency, or they don't like to use the word frequency, talk group that is able to communicate statewide. So from Whittier, we can not only communicate with Anchorage, Ketchikan, Seattle, Cordova, statewide. With that radio infrastructure system, we need there will be updating within the next 2 years that talk group and radio that our current radios, our XTS radios, is not compatible with it. On top of that, our current radios is functionally obsolete for Motorola. Motorola does not make any replacement parts for it or batteries. Currently, if we want batteries for our existing hand packs, we go to eBay or third-party vendors from China, Batteries Plus. They don't even make antennas. So what we're slowly trying to do is completely replace it. It still works right now for local VHF frequency direct, but in another 2 more years, we won't be able to use that same infrastructure to talk around the state, as well as our dispatch center. Where the police and EMS primarily uses that is when we go outside the Whittier proper area, we could communicate with dispatch, our officers, other officers, and emergency personnel. With the ambulance or medics transporting to Anchorage, they're able to communicate not only with dispatch, but the hospitals in Anchorage, because they're also on the same ALMR system. The other thing we're in the process of doing too is when Aeromed or Airflight comes in, they also have an ALMR frequency. So the pain comes in when we're using a third party or dispatch to talk to a helicopter, tell them where to land, where we can now contact them directly. So with this grant was a last minute thing that popped up, was specific for law enforcement. So the funding will cover 3 hand packs and 1 mobile radio. We're hopeful in the future that more grants will come up and we'll apply for it. The total funding amount is $37,790 on that. If you have any question, I'm free to answer them.
Thank you, Andre. Are there any further questions? Hearing none?
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-007, authorizing the city manager to accept grant funds in the amount of $37,791 from the State of Alaska Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management for the purpose of replacing obsolete mobile and portable radio systems and appropriating funds. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-007 is approved.
Moving on to Resolution 2025-008. Would you please read that into the record?
Resolution 2025-008 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to accept grant funds in the amount of $53,500 from the Alaska Energy Authority for the purpose of upgrading and retrofitting harbor lighting infrastructure and appropriating funds.
Can I get a first and a second motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-008.
Second.
Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, I'll have the harbor master give that staff report.
Good evening. So this grant will replace the lighting down in the launch ramp area. I think you guys remember we had a fire down there. We lost a bunch of lighting. And this will replace the sodium lighting with LED lighting. And this will also replace all of the upgraded boardwalk, the 150 watt sodium lighting and the 250 watt sodium lighting that goes down into the harbor with all LED lighting, which will reduce the power consumption quite a bit. It says here about $3,200 annually, which is, that's a significant savings. Also, this comes at a good time because the majority of our lighting down there is failing. They're just old. They were put in many years ago. They're aluminum housings. And when we replaced bulbs in them last, we actually had some of the infrastructure in the lighting had burnt up, caught fire, and finding parts for some of those items were very difficult. We found them, but they were also very expensive. So this will be an upgrade across the board. The poles will remain. This will just replace the actual heads. And just to give you an example of going to LED lighting, we went to LED lighting 2 years ago on the DeLong dock and saved approximately $17,000 by going to those high mast LEDs over the sodiums that we were burning out there. So it does make a big difference. Thank you.
So did we get reimbursed for some funds from the fire that happened?
On the launch ramp? Yes.
There was a.
Yes, we did.
Oh, this was on the launch. Okay. I thought it was on the dock itself.
No, the launch ramp.
I remember that. So Chris, I think I know where this funds are coming from. Is it correct that this would be drawn from our waterborne passenger fee?
No, this is a grant.
I thought we had to match.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a good question. We did budget for $17,000 to match this grant in the harbor budget. So the money is already available in the budget. To be honest with you, I didn't double check to see which fund whether it was in the harbor fund itself, but because it's under 20,000, it typically would be funded within the harbor's budget itself. And anything over 20,000 would be from the Harbor Major Repair and Replacement Fund. But I just can't remember which pot of money we budgeted it. But nonetheless, it was approved in the budget already, the match.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Hearing none?
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-008, authorizing the city manager to accept grant funds in the amount of $53,500 from the Alaska Energy Authority for the purpose of upgrading and retrofitting harbor lighting infrastructure and appropriating funds. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark. Yes. Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-008 is approved.
Would you please read Resolution 2025-010?
Would you like me to do 009 first?
009.
Okay.
Resolution 2025-009 is a resolution authorizing the sole source procurement of Nucor Wi-Fi enabled digital power meters for Whittier Harbor in an amount not to exceed $85,000 and appropriating funds.
Yeah, I'll make a
Motion and a
motion
second.
to approve resolution 2025-009.
Second.
Is there a staff report?
Yes, thank
Yes,
you,
Mayor, I'll have the harbor master do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe a majority of the pedestals were replaced in 17, Scott? Yeah. And when they did that, they were supplied with an analog power reading option, and that majority of those are starting to fail. We could, right now, we're probably at about 100 that have just completely failed. And after a lot of troubleshooting and homework and working with the company, it doesn't make sense to go back to analog for several reasons. It's just old technology. We don't know when they go bad. They just start going bad until a customer calls us and says, why am I paying $200 a month for power when traditionally I've been paying $30 a month? So what we've been doing is going back historically, and we've been basically averaging out power fees because that's the best we can really do for our customers. What this will allow us to do is they're wirelessly speak to each other, these new cores. They're a direct replacement for the analogs that we have right now, and they go to a database, separate computer that would be at the harbor office, and we'd be able to pull up each individual pedestal real time and see what their power usage is, which is really nice, especially if people think somebody's thieving power from them and say, hey, I was gone. We'll be able to actually do a little historical look at them. We'll be able to replace them. We'll know when they go bad instead of just hey, we think it went bad. We'll know because it'll tell us on the computer will let us know that this thing's bad. This will replace the ones that we currently have in the harbor, and then we will upgrade the ones that are being replaced on G and A with them as we do that phase 3 project. Thank you.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, just real quick. We discussed this last year. This is a budget line item in the budget, is it not?
I don't believe we actually added it to the budget this year. We were going to use the MRF fund for this portion of the project, and then we'll use phase 3 monies for G and A float.
Hearing no further questions,
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-009, authorizing the sole source procurement of new core Wi-Fi enabled digital power meters for Whittier Harbor in an amount not to exceed $85,000 and appropriating funds. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark. Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Pincush.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-009 is approved.
Okay. Moving on to Resolution 2025-010, pledging to pursue certification as an Alaska Clean Harbor. Is there a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion to approve 2025-010.
Second.
Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an exciting thing that I know has been being worked on for many years. My predecessor started it, didn't go anywhere with it, not by any fault of their own. The Clean Harbors program has been kind of hit and miss and has passed off through several different entities over the years. Cook Inlet Keepers started it. It went over to the Alaska Marine Exchange. They managed it for a while. And now the Alaska Sea Grant has taken it over, and it sounds like it found a really good home there. Alaska Clean Harbors is a neat program in the fact that it provides harbors with some best management practices and several different levels of what we can attain. And it gives you a little bit of pride in what we can get done and do in the harbor. A lot of it kind of just centers around signage and best management practices around your grid areas, your trash areas, and so on and so forth. So the very first step is to get us to request buy-in from the council that they support the program, and that moves us forward into working on getting our certification. We've been working on it kind of in the just to get an idea where we could go. They've done a tiered program, and we believe that we can meet the gold standard at this point, which is really exciting for us to have that. You ask what's in it for us? What does it mean for us? We are actually, the Alaska Harbor Masters Association, which I'm a part of, has been working on trying to fold this into maybe scoring extra points on grants, things like that. So I think it's well worth, it's not something we carry forever and ever. It's a 5-year certification, and then we kind of keep maintaining that. We go back to the Alaska Sea Grant program and say, hey, we're ready for renewal, or we're ready to go for the platinum, which would be really awesome if we can do that. But yeah, excited to do that. And I think within the next probably May, June time period, we should be able to come forth with a completed application that will move forward to Sea Grant for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, David.
Yeah, okay. First, like probably 3 questions. First question would be, what anticipated cost is there to the boaters for it?
I don't feel that there's any costs really over our normal track of business. We're not really doing anything extraordinary that would really add cost to the operation.
Okay, and second question, is there, you perceive any changes to the regulations to boaters because of it?
Nope, it's basically a best management practice. That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get people to do the right thing and making
Okay.
sure that they understand what our services are that are available. It's kind of the onus is on the harbor and the harbor department to make sure that that the public knows what's available to them.
Okay, and then the third question, which I kind of don't understand, is why do they want buy-in from the city council? Why wouldn't the harbor and harbor master association just do it? I don't quite understand why the city council would be part of it in a sense.
I think it's just a program. It's the basic premise of the program to say, yeah, the city's involved. We support the Clean Harbor project and process, and nothing more than that, really. That you support the harbor going forth with working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I just add one thing to that? I do want to say in my previous life, our harbor did get the first Alaska certification, and we then in the years future, we use that for grant opportunities. It is a good thing. You can use those resources, and it's a good thing for the environment, but it's also a good thing for the city to be able to say that we support it. So when we apply for the grants, we show the certification, we show the approved resolution, and it just gives you extra little points.
Mr. Dickerson.
Yeah, I was going to say it might have maybe some positive ramifications for insurance, that doing something like that means that we've got more control over what's going on.
Very well could be, yeah. Worth looking into for sure.
So hearing no further discussion,
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-010, pledging to pursue certification as an Alaska Clean Harbor. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-010 is approved.
Okay, moving on to other business.
Mr. Mayor, you still have resolutions 2025-011 through 2025-013 as well.
Oh. I turned 2 pages, sorry about that. So, Madam Clerk, would you please read Resolution 2025-011?
Resolution 2025-011 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Ramos HR Consulting to provide professional human resources services to the city of Whittier in an amount not to exceed $19,050 annually and appropriating funds.
Is there a motion and a second?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-011.
Second.
We have a staff report.
Yes, Mayor. As council knows, the city administration did go out for an RFP, had, I believe, 7 applicants turn in. The RFPs were scored and by a scoring committee, and through that process, the whole purpose of this was to figure out and provide human resource services for your city employees. So the city of Whittier requires professional human resources services to support its municipal operations, including compliance with labor laws, employee relations, recruitment, benefits administration, and overall HR. In the past, we did have that in-house, and while it was good at that time, as you move forward, the HR is just a very tricky situation where you need to have somebody that can, by the pick up a telephone, answer certain labor laws, answer certain things, and be able to help your employees, maneuver within whatever resources or issues that they're having. While in the past it's been okay to try to help that, even in the last couple years, we see where that progression, it's extremely hard. You try to put on an HR hat and figure out the billing or figure out the answer and then reach out to your legal. While we put out this RFP, we received really good return, and with that came us offering a contract with Ramos. They will be taking care of all of those needs for our employees, and we'll start on, if it is approved, we'll start onboarding and getting them in. They will help with the hiring, the ability to do research to possibly help us with getting lower insurance rates, and that comes at a cost of $19,050 per year. I do want to say that at the time when we did the budget, we did not discuss what this would look like, because in our minds, even myself thought, okay, we can try to hire somebody, but as time progressed, it just became more apparent that it is not wise for us to just hire an individual that, maybe every once in a while has the ability to put on that HR hat. It would be beneficial for the employees and the city in the long term to be able to offer just that service. And so while they won't be here in the office, they'll be always available, and the way that application and contract works. So if there's any questions, I would gladly answer them, but you will need to, if it is approved, we will also need to finance can give you the update on how we would have to do that appropriation.
Peter?
So as a human resources functionary, that's a pretty wide scope of responsibility. And basically want to get the scope of what their function will be. Will they be background checks for new hires? What is their essential job description?
Yeah, so exactly that. They'll be helping with the hiring. They'll be working on the insurances. They'll be working on background checks, just like you said. That is something, having a company like this have the ability to do that is a lower cost for us. Also, they'll be doing all of the drug tests. They'll be doing all of those functions, as well as reviewing and updating our employee procedure manual and making sure that it matches our code and they're within the law there. So those duties of an actual human resources, they'll be doing
the interviews, setting of the interviews, doing all of those. If we, when we hire seasonal employees, or, we have police officers that, that are being hired, it would be through their firm.
That would actually be doing the interviews for?
No, they would put out the notices. They would do all of that. They would create the set of questions, and they would be in the room or online for for that interview. But this interviews would still happen within the city.
And if my memory serves me, that this notion, these people would be involved in any grievance process as well amongst the staff.
Yes, they would be that first step, right? So if an employee needs to file a grievance, they would contact the HR. HR would then say, okay, this is a grievance, and then bring it forward to the city manager.
So, and given the contract amount, is there a set number of hours that they would be applying here, or is this just whatever we need, and this is an estimated cost for services to be provided?
While reviewing all of the RFPs, this one especially, I think, stuck out to the individuals that were doing the scoring, and I think the biggest part of that was that, we know at the beginning, the onboarding part of like, here's how many employees we have, and here's all the issues that we're dealing with right now, and getting them on, it will be 20 hours a week. But then it would be an on-call. Like they would do the reporting and file all of our insurance reports and that to our payroll. Our payroll would still stay here. They wouldn't be doing any of that. They would file that information, we'd pay the bill for the insurance like we do now. But right now you have the staff of us trying to do all of those things because we don't have an HR person. We don't have that other individual. So the 19,000, we're breaking it up. We know that the first couple months is going to take a portion of that, and then we would work it out to where it would be a monthly, maybe 20 hours a month.
So this is not a cap for services on an annual basis.
It's not to exceed $19,050. It won't exceed $19,050.
Over the course of a year?
A year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the workload that they are presented with?
$19,050.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a killer deal. My experience with HR is it's fluid. The laws change almost every year, if not more than once in a year. And they will also be bringing recommendations to you with regard to employee policy to tighten that up, I'm sure. Basically reduce our liability. And so it's a killer deal.
Yeah, and just not even the employee policies. Again, this one stuck out to us, even just in their example. They provided an example of an employee manual that they had put together, easy to read, easy to comprehend and complying with the code that they were working with. So you're going to see leaps and bounds even with the ability for we do have employees, that I would say that on a monthly basis, we have at least 2 employees say, okay, I'm really confused. This is what's in your handbook for policies, but it's not in code. And I'm confused on that aspect. And so I think that just that alone, we know the work that went in 3.5 years ago into an employee policy manual, and just knowing that they're going to take that and look at that and be able to do those updates too.
Yeah, and they take the initiative. They go get trained. They stay up to date. It's part of the magic that makes this happen. Do we have any further questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so interestingly enough, my biggest concern is expansion of this. Like you said, it's a screaming deal. Interestingly enough, our next resolution is an increase in the dispatcher. So going back through history on dispatch started out as a person, probably a cost to the city of $55,000 to $60,000. Then we came along and got the dispatch contract for like 28. We didn't get rid of that person, so it went to 80. And now we're looking at $91,000. So we're up to about $150,000, which started out as 55. And I have grave concerns that this $19,000 in 5 years is going to be a lot higher than that. So I have a question. I mean, it's good to have specialists. I don't disagree with that. And if we had our ground fee in place, it probably wouldn't even be a concern. But so my understanding, if I remember correctly, this was the executive assistant's job. And I guess I questioned to the city manager is, we know we discussed this, but have we replaced the executive assistant? Are we going to replace the executive assistant, or are we going to absorb that position? Like, and will this be in lieu of that position, or are we just this will be a growth addition to the government?
So all good questions, Mr. Pankush, through the mayor, if I can answer. First and foremost, I know the need and desire not to add more city government, right? But at the same time, I hear what you're saying about the dispatch portion. This position, as it stands right now, to me is not a position, it's a contract, and it is only good through, there's no external options to extend. It's through December of 2026. So, there's a portion, number one, in my mind that says, okay, by December of 2026, if you had the ability to have a person come in and be like, okay, yes, I can be that HR person at the same time because I have all of those trainings and everything. That would be something that, if I'm still here in 2026 as your city manager, would definitely look at and go, okay, what does this look like for the city for the next 5 years or the next 3 years? But at the same time, when it talks about the executive assistant, I want to preface that off of just that job title, right? So there's an executive assistant in the job title and in the classification, but though that job morphed, over years when employees left, all of a sudden somebody takes and puts on another hat, and it just sort of started morphing. And, there was portions where the assistant city manager helped with HR. There were portions that when an assistant city manager then went, okay, well, like I'm working all on these other things, and you have me in charge of other people, and now you've got me in charge and I have to put an HR hat on. And then that person left, and the one person that was still here was like, yeah, I do taxes and I do answer phones and I take payments, but I'll try to figure out and I'll do HR. And while that worked at that time, even in the last, like I said, 3 years, you see it start to morph, and there's just this liability scare, like that we're not protecting the employees. And if we're not protecting the employees with knowledgeable people that could do it, then we're opening the city up to a liability on that. We have under our legal right now, we have an HR legal attorney, right? But there are things that we can't pick up the phone and call her to ask her to answer for an employee. And while I would love to say right now, I don't have even the assistant position. In my mind, it's not an executive assistant position. It's an admin assistant position. I don't even have that out as for an application or for a job offer. Right now I'm working more on the emergency hire portion, if we can get somebody to come in and help us, get those things organized. So I don't right now see us filling that position, but I also know that on the city side and the employee side, life happens. And so I will say at any given time, we could not have 3 people in administration because of something going on in their lives. And we need to be able to know that if we were to hire an admin, that person, again, would wear all these multiple hats. And I just don't think that it's wise to try to throw an admin into a situation
that would possibly be started out at the lower classification on the pay scale and then try to say, oh, by the way, we're going to throw HR at you. And so when I look at that, the cost savings, not even a cost savings. If I say right now today, let's say I have 5 applications for an admin position, I'd start them at that lower scale. You would still, with the $20,000 or $19,000 contract, be leveled out at what we were initially and what was budgeted in for that position for 2025 and 2026.
Okay, I appreciate that, Jackie. And so I guess I would have 2 comments. One is a request that as long as that position isn't filled for a while, that would certainly covered it. Maybe till we know the ground fee's going to go. But on the other side of it, I won't mention names, but I believe there was a termination in the city a while back, and I think that person might have fared much better had they had someone like this to call. So I believe it would 100% would have benefited the employee in that situation. Thank you.
And any budget implications?
Chris, can you go ahead and answer that?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, through the mayor. Yes, yes and no. So currently, we're asking for an appropriation for this this contract because we didn't expressly put it in the budget. But we do have this open position that hasn't been filled, and so technically, if assuming that position were to go unfilled, then we don't need the money because we would already have extra money in the budget for something else, being wages. But just because when we crafted this, as Jackie said, there's still some uncertainty about the path forward. I think our priority was to fill the assistant city manager position and get HR tackled. We also have a number of personnel issues going on with potential absences and so on that we have to keep in mind and how best to address those. So to give us the most flexibility, we're keeping the position open for the time being, so there will be savings, but we're asking for an appropriation in the event the position gets filled.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? Hearing none.
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-011, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Ramos HR Consulting to provide professional human resources services to the city of Whittier in an amount not to exceed $19,050 annually and appropriating funds. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Pincush.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-011 is approved. Mr. Mayor, could I possibly request a recess?
Certainly.
Thank you. How long would you like for the recess?
I don't feel like I have a lot of control on that.
Shoot for 10 minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Mayor, if I could just announce that it appears that we have lost Mr. Wagner at this point. We still have a quorum.
Okay. So would you please read Resolution 2025-012, Madam Clerk?
Resolution 2025-012 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the city of Valdez for dispatch services in an amount not to exceed $91,125 and appropriating funds.
Can I ask for a motion and a second, please?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-012.
Staff report?
Mayor, I'll have the Public Safety Director do the staff report.
Good evening, gentlemen. This was for an RFP for dispatch services. Our current dispatch service contract with the city of Sitka expired on February 1st, but we extended another month or 2 months to get the RFP out. Initially, when we approached them on the renewal, their increase was over a 50% increase. So we thought it to be fair to go out to competitive bid. Competitive bid documents went out and only 2 entities applied. Of the 2, we had the evaluators, myself, Chief Gates, and Harbor Master Borg evaluated the 2 proposals. And it was actually really good with all 3. We were roughly a 1.5 difference between the first and second place proposals, which ended up winning was City of Valdez. The Valdez proposal approximately 190 or approximately $91,000 is approximately a 66% increase over our current dispatch contract, which is $55,000. The main reason, and both Sitka, who also applied and gave us an initial offer, was right around that same amount. With the two bidders, the dollar amount that separated with them was less than $1,000 of the two bids we received. And with Valdez, several points stood out with the city of Valdez. One is their dispatch center that has approximately 7 dispatchers is at 100% staffing, which there's not a downtime. Others that benefits both our communities is our dispatchers are all trained as EMD, emergency medical dispatch, as well as their senior dispatcher has 22 years of experience as a communication or dispatch officer, and the rest of their staff of average of 10 years experience. The primary difference is the technical equipment they have. They have the ability to do our ALMR frequencies, our ALMR radios. The other software aspects, which is software, we utilize what's called a CAD system and an RMS system. That's a database. We keep track of all our information and dispatch calls. They use a different software. There's an ability, and we're working on getting a patch for their software into our software, so it'll be seamless. There's going to be a little bit of charge to that. With their price, or the award price of $91,000 at about a 66% increase over our existing contract, we've also already talked to, or I've already conveyed to Girdwood, which our service agreement with them expires December 31st of this year. And they have an option for a 2-year renewable. That option amount that we initially gave them will change because of the dispatch contract being an increase. So what I'm anticipating is giving 50% of the increase would go to Girdwood, because we service both Girdwood as well as Whittier. With that, the other aspects of the $91,000, we feel that is a good amount, especially with less than $1,000 difference between both entities. And with Valdez being right in our neighborhood, we're not going to have certain other issues. In the last 3 months, with just internet aspect, everyone probably heard of the fiber optic line being severed in Juneau. That affected our ability to communicate with our dispatch center. That type of incidents happened 3 times in the last 3 months. With Valdez being the Prince William Sound onto us, close to us, as well as being connected by land as well as radio, we don't anticipate that type of issues happening. So I would request that you authorize the city manager to go into contract with Valdez. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Do you have any council questions?
It's a function of reading the public safety report. The number of calls that we make in Girdwood more than doubles what actually happens here in Whittier. I've always felt that our Girdwood contract has been generous, and they are using resources as twice the rate as Whittier. So I guess my snippy question would be, is considering this increase as a 50% per community actually equitable?
The primary increase in the Girdwood service contract is our security checks. And that's when basically on downtimes, Girdwood's a bigger community, so we cut an incident for every security check. So the biggest thing, if you look at our stats, the primary increase, there is an increase, but the majority of the increase are security checks when we do business security checks of that nature. In Whittier, we also do the same thing, but wintertime, most of the businesses are shut down. We'll do security checks just in the harbor area, but in Girdwood, we actually check different businesses, rattle doors, and there are multiple different businesses to do security check. That's a primary. There is also an increase in traffic stops in that area, in the Girdwood area versus Whittier. But that is something that they also get a copy of our stats, so they are also aware that there is an increase. If you look at it, initially it was roughly 100% difference between, like, if we had 100, they had 200 calls. But now if you look at it, if we have 100 calls, they're almost 250 to 300 calls. So we could also look at that when at the end of the year. We're going to actually probably go into negotiations for the next 2-year extension, probably in the next couple of months once we finalize this contract and I talk to administration as to what else they want to see. But I do agree with you. There is
Thank
a
you.
difference.
Hearing no further discussion,
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-012, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the City of Valdez for dispatch services in an amount not to exceed $91,125 and appropriating funds. Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Denmark, Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner. Oh, apologies. No, not Mr. Wagner. Mr. Shen,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-012 is approved.
Would you please read Resolution 2025-013?
Resolution 2025-013 is a resolution determining that leasing a parking area to the Alaska Marine Highway System is in the best interest of the City of Whittier.
I'd ask for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-013.
Is there a staff report?
Yes, Mayor and Council. The City of Whittier received a request from the Alaska Marine Highway System, which is a state agency, to lease a 7,000 square foot parcel of land located adjacent to the northern boundary of the Whittier Ferry Terminal, same location that they've asked for every year. So I just want to preface on that. In accordance with Whittier Municipal Code 3.38540, leases to the government entities may be exempt from competitive bidding process or other requirements, provided that the city council determines that this is in the best interest of the city to do so. This lease would support vital transportation services to improve the efficiency of city property and promote positive relations in state agencies. The proposed lease term is for 1 year from April 12th to 2025 to April 11th, 2026, with an annual fee of $13,922.24. This is brought to you a little bit differently than it has been in the past. Our code's really specific on how long a short-term agreement can be and whether you turn that short-term agreement into a long-term lease, how that works. But at the same time, it gives the council the ability to say, yes, this is in the best interest. We're not going to make them go into a long-term lease because it's only a specific amount of time. And as your administration, to keep with the way that your code is, it's on my level, I would say this is a lease that in my mind could have been considered a long-term lease, because even though it was temporarily appropriated for a certain amount, it's not an entire, it's one section. It's not used except for certain times of the year. And so by looking at it, I determined that it would be the best interest to bring it forward to the council to see if they see it as a best use. And if you do, then we would approve it that way. Or if the council wants us to look at offering it out for lease, then we would do it in a process in which individuals would have to put in for the lease itself. You would have to open it up and offer it to anybody to be able to lease.
Is this a continuation of previous leases? Is essentially a renewal?
Yes, but it's not, we're not, yes.
Okay, we've walked this path before.
Mhm. Yeah, you've walked it before. It's just a different way. Instead of saying, what I'm saying is your administration is saying is
instead of saying, let's put it out for anyone to bid on it and try to figure out a use, you as council are going to say, we deem this as the best use right now.
Any other options would be significantly lesser.
Yes.
Do we have any further discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none?
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-013, determining that leasing a parking area to the Alaska Marine Highway System is in the best interest of the city of Whittier. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Denmark.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Not Mr. Wagner. Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. McCalt. Apologies. Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-013 is approved.
I'd ask for a motion to put on the table sales tax on agenda to change sales tax from 12 months to 6 months.
Mr. Mayor, you do not need a motion. It has already been approved by approving the agenda to discuss or to have it on the table.
Okay, it's on the table. Do I have any comments?
If I may, I did vote in support of this ordinance. Sensitive to the administration's accounting efforts, just to streamline the process. The input I've gotten in retrospect, given the input I've gotten from the community, and I've been rankled on this one more than once. Given the opportunity, I would revert my support for a 6-month sales tax.
What's the reason? What are the reasons?
Unpopularity amongst the voting public.
So what was brought before me is that a significant number of our residents do not have a winter job. And as such, they consider it a burden. One thing I didn't even think about was anytime you do any type of shipping, Amazon, USPS, they figure out a way to tax you. And so, you have these residents that have worked all summer, they've saved their pennies, and then they buy something and then they get taxed on it. I would like for council to consider the impact is greater for somebody that does not have a year-round job.
Be interesting to go through a season just to see how much we're actually deriving from it. Be nice to have some data before we approach this. It's kind of hard to tell right now, having only been in effect for 3 months. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're going to have 9 months worth of data. I'm asking for council to consider to bring it forward so that the sales tax ends at the same time frame that it ended in 2024. So you'll have your data. I think people that pay taxes on mortgage and things like that, we only have like 2 residents that have boats. So in Anchorage, there's a richer job market. They are employed year round. What I would respectfully ask council is to have it brought forward and that we vote on it. It will either pass or it won't.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask to for the opportunity to speak.
Sure.
Can I say something?
Thank you. A couple things. First of all, I think that the city of Whittier spent, as council knows, probably 3 years of reviewing our tax code kind of top to bottom. We made substantial changes to the sales tax code, substantive changes by eliminating the PTBT and replacing that with the waterborne transportation fee, and then creation of the new ground transportation fee. There was a lot of moving parts, a considerable number of public meetings, and a lot of outreach from the administration to the public and vice versa. I think that some of the accommodations we've made for local residents, they pay no sales tax on their rent. So housing is not affected. They pay no sales tax on their groceries. So food items are not affected. And I would dare to say in most communities, those things are not tax exempt. So I think the council not only took into account the needs of the local residents, but also we added some additional exemptions that were particular to families. If you remember, diapers and those kind of items, exempting those. So I think council's done a really thoughtful, deliberative job in deciding how to minimize the impact to the locals. I also think that setting tax policy is a very delicate matter that should be done slowly, like we did previously. And I really don't feel it's reasonable to try to consider undoing a tax that was implemented on January 1st. We're right around mid-March. I just don't think it's good policy to make such a major change like that. It sends a bad message to our business community also, because please keep in mind that for a business, and some of our businesses are small and they may still do their math on paper. I don't know. But a lot of the bigger businesses have computers that need to be programmed for sales tax, and asking them to jump back and forth between computer programming multiple times during the year is onerous. You might talk to some of those businesses that have to go back and forth because they were largely the folks asking for this change, asking it to be year round because of the impact to them of having to program computers. I also want to remind council, one of the main reasons that we went to this year-round tax had to do with the challenge. We all know that the harbor is a considerable part of Whittier's economic engine. And the big part of the challenge is for businesses that are collecting reservations year round for services that are taking place in the summer. And those businesses are going to wrongfully assume that today is March, the phone rang, I took a reservation for a May charter, but it's March, it's winter. That's it. Whittier's not taxable right now, so I'm not charging sales tax. When in fact, it's really when the charter takes place. And that level of confusion has really, I think, played a large role in the confusion that we have with people filing tax returns incorrectly. So I think there's a lot of things at play here that, and then maybe the largest is the fact, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, that the majority of our harbor users are not from Whittier. We said there's less than the number of fingers on one hand that are folks from Whittier, which means that the people that are paying moorage are now paying moorage on 100% of their moorage, because moorage is going to be divided by 12 months and it's taxable on a monthly basis. So What that means is, for the most part, people that paid mortgage from outside of Whittier weren't paying sales tax on it, and now they're required to pay sales tax on it, regardless of what month they're being assessed. So I just want to remind council of why we passed it in the first place. I think another consideration as to at least delaying a decision has to do with the future of the ground-based transportation fee. There has been a very concerted effort by a small handful of people to sink Whittier's ground transportation fee with a statewide effort to, in my opinion, to misinform members of various trade groups. There's been, for example, a letter that's gone out to trade associations asking them to submit objections to Whittier's fee to the state of Alaska, on the basis that they argue if Whittier's ground transportation fee is allowed to stand, then won't every community along the rail belt tack on transportation fees to freight, thus making freight exorbitantly expensive throughout Alaska? And that is a huge mischaracterization of our ground transportation fee. Our ground transportation fee is an impact fee on from passengers, not freight. But you will hear more about this, because this is a large effort that's being, our issue in Whittier is being politicized by certain people, and it's becoming a more of a state Chamber of Commerce issue and a state contractors association issue. And these are the people we'll be hearing from, who will be lodging complaints with the state about our fee. And we're happy to address those because they're all based on misinformation. However, that said, the stakes are very high because our budget, it will, imagine if I said to you that for some reason, our ground transportation fee is going to go away. And that's more than $1.5 million per year. That's factored into our budget. So then I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, how are we going to fill that hole? Because remember, last year we were filling a big enough hole just with the loss of the PTBT, over $600,000. So if we have to come back and say, how are we going to fill a hole that's bigger than $1 million? We're talking about layoffs. We're talking about not doing any of the great things that we were all so excited about in our budget last year, and really being back to, I would say, worse off than we've been, maybe back to where we were when I first got here, like in big financial problems if we're not able to solve that problem. Then I would be recommending to you, maybe we should unwind all the good work we did in the waterborne transportation fee going to the harbor, because now we won't have enough money to pay for public safety and public works. So, you know, that because of the level of effort that's being put at grounding our ground transportation fee, I think it's premature for us to make decisions that will adversely affect us financially. And so that's a major reason not to do it now. But I also think it's just not good public policy when you're dealing with taxes. The best approach is a slow approach. It's a consistent approach. It's, you know, getting feedback, having good data, and I think that's going to take us a little longer. So while I understand the sentiment, and I'm not, you know, I would need more information about the impact on our local residents. I've never heard this before. I've never heard anybody complain about it, and I'm not saying that those complaints aren't real, but for one thing, we are not participants in the state online sales. So the state has a particular program for online sales. And if the city of Whittier participated in that, then companies like Amazon and other online retailers would be for sure collecting and remitting sales tax to the city through that program, and then the city would be getting those revenues. I can assure you we're not getting a lot of revenues from Amazon or other online retailers. So people making the argument that they're paying all this sales tax, to me, does not ring true unless whoever's collecting the sales tax isn't remitting it, which I would find very hard to believe. So there's a lot of reasons I would just ask you to consider waiting until we have more information, but most especially concerning for me is the potential threats to our ground transportation fee and the significant financial burden that would place on the city. Thank you.
I have some thoughts as well. I think I would echo that. I think backtracking on this would be a knee-jerk reaction. It is something we've been planning for a while, and to pivot so quickly on things that take years to really see the results of is unwise. I think another one is just a short time period. There might be a lack of awareness and education as to how this tax works. We have, like Chris said, we put in a lot of exemptions for year-round residents. Have that in mind. Everything from groceries for families, diapers, feminine hygiene products, necessities that people need to live. We exempted that all, and perhaps it's some of our businesses are not fully aware, have not fully caught up with what the exemptions are. So I think it would be fair to by not being so part of this right now. I think it would be a knee-jerk reaction. Thank you.
I was definitely not thinking about making a change between now and the beginning of summer. I was actually advocating that we bring it forward and only change the time for whatever that time frame is, September or October, and then keep all of the exemptions. We have the original intent when the community, I think we had to approve that sales tax, and the original intent for a 6-month tax versus a 12-month tax is to make use of that revenue from our visitors in terms of the food and services they purchase that are not included in the fees of the waterborne or the ground transportation tax. So there is some history, and change is hard. And,
May I say something else?
Who's that?
May I say something else after you're done?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think another thing is that we, as part of our economy, is something we've been pushing for, expanding our tourism season. We've been pushing for year-round tourism, finding options. People are coming into Whittier year-round now, and that's revenue that's another more potential revenue that is to be captured. Sales tax has been around for a long time, and perhaps maybe sales tax down the road, maybe sales tax might not be the most appropriate thing. Maybe I'm not saying we do it, but if we are hoping to capture revenue from visitors, perhaps we should look at a fuel, bed, alcohol tax instead of a sales tax. I don't know. Maybe sales tax is not the right tool the best tool for us, but it's the tool that we have now. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Since you brought it up, I'll state that most of you probably remember I made an amendment to to leave the sales tax as it was. That was voted down, and then I voted against this because of that. So my vote would not change. But I do think, and you know, when that was being pitched to us, the money that it brought in was not the pitch. It was not part of it. We would survive without it. But I do think because we have kind of made our 26 budget based on the ground fee, that it would be appropriate. You were talking about, I think it's October 15th or October 1st when it would start. I do think it would be appropriate for the ground fee to be established before we consider undoing it. So basically, if you brought, I will just tell you, if you brought a resolution forth to end it in this October, I would sign it. But I think it would be more appropriate to end it October of 2026, providing that the ground fee is established. I think that would be a leveler way of doing it. But I've also gotten complaints. I got the complaints. Well, I got complaints before we even got to the vote. So, I mean, I was influenced before it even got there. But, you know, and the $1 million we'd lose if we don't have the ground fee. We didn't have it before. I know we have put a hole in the budget with the old PTBT tax, but you know, we survived without it, so it wouldn't necessarily be that big. But I think the sales tax will be bigger than anticipated, if there was an anticipation. I didn't think it would be over $100,000, but having the boat owners pay year round is a significant amount. And I don't know, that might be more hassle than it's worth, but I wouldn't be opposed to leaving it on the boats year round. That would be year round for moorage, but not for other stuff. But it might become too complicated. But the other thing I would say is if you do put a resolution in to end it this October, I would also put in there something that stipulates that anything that has been paid for sales tax that's been paid for 2025, that you wouldn't refund it. Because, for example, I paid I think I did. I don't do it, Phyllis does, but I think I paid for my mortgage for the year. So I paid tax for the year, and I wouldn't want the city to have to go back and refund the sales tax for October, November, and December. So if it's going to go forward, now that should be established, that if it's already paid, it would not be recalculated.
So it would be an ordinance change. So
Okay.
if we brought it forward in September, it wouldn't actually be enacted until October. That being said, if we were to wait till September, there may be additional information presented to council with regard to just what we're stepping into with the ground transportation fee. So
Given the conversation here and that we're now on a biannual budget, as somebody recommended, I think when we go into the 27-28 budget cycle, that might be a more appropriate time for this conversation. As unpopular as this has been brought to me.
Okay. Well, thank you for the feedback. So I'd like to talk to or go to the next agenda item. And I think I may have mispronounced it, but we're doing a harbor economic uplands economic study, and we approved this. We spent quite a bit of money to bring this in, and when I look at the draft of how this was going to be implemented, it seems like we still have an opportunity to make some changes here. Let me just go over some of my observations. One is this Harbor Uplands Economic Development Study incorporates all tidelands held by the city of Whittier, the East Launch Ramp, and Smitty's Cove, which are owned in common by the residents of Whittier. And yet, and so effectively making the residents of the shareholders of all Harbor Uplands. As this thing unfolded, there were 3 focus groups identified, at least, maybe more. And instead of publicly posting them, they were, businesses were contacted. And so when you look at the number of local residents that own businesses, you're basically excluding 95% of your shareholders. So the freight, passenger, land-based focus group, I think most of them wanted to speak to the tourism and recreation. There's a lot of young go-getters that are in our community that want to have the American dream, which is to start and own their own business. And with the progression of how our community is developing, I think it's really, I'd like to encourage the administration to, one of the things that it said in that draft was that administration would work with this contractor and refine the methods used. And so I'd like to ask the administration to be a little bit more sympathetic to those people who they don't have jobs. They don't have jobs in the winter, but they're working 3 jobs in the summer. And it would be my strong desire for them to only have 2 jobs in the summer and the 3rd job be self-employment. It's a life-changing opportunity, and there's no reason that we can't offer that. And I'm telling you, we're leaving information on the table here. They're motivated, they're hard workers, and they're smart. They've come to me with ideas that is not getting into this plan, and we're all losing out. We're losing out on the diversity of food, services that can be rendered, and in a show of good faith in terms of transparency, it would be really helpful. I mean, the next step of this economic development plan or study is that I would imagine administration is going to apply for grants. Well, that means that when those grants come through, the grants that have matching funds, I don't think it's completely fair to have excluded 98% of your community from all of the conversation, and then take general funds and or any other restricted funds and match those grants. So I would like for administration to meet with these. One of the things that came out in January, this is the last meeting we had, was that it would cost too much. And I think that this group that's doing this study, they don't understand the scale of a community of 250. If they do their job really good and they post it all over town, they might get 3 more people. Okay. So I don't see how 3 more people giving feedback only to the items that are focused. If they get out of line and they aren't able to focus, then we'll have to, I think a lot of this stuff is happening online, so you just knock them offline. But I mean, they are seriously motivated, and I don't see where when this was brought before council, that all members of the council realized that there would be implied favoritism
Mr.
for
Mayor?
only businesses. So, yes.
With all due respect, I'd like to ask the council to please go to the city website. The head of our website, there's a tab called Projects, and under that is the Whittier Economic Development Plan. And every meeting is listed there, and all the stakeholders are listed there. And there are many, many, many stakeholders. There's a commercial services focus group, a freight transportation group, a government group, a land management group, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, local organizations, passenger transportation, tourism and recreation. And if you click on that, you'll see the members of all of those groups, an incredibly broad group of people from this community and people that have a stake in what happens in Whittier's economy because they run businesses here or they're government entities operating here. And I think it's really unfair to characterize this as not being a broad-based plan and project. This is actually, in my 35 years of doing local government, the best managed project I've ever seen for public participation. And I don't say that lightly because I've participated in many of these things. I am constantly impressed by this group that's managing this project because of the way they're managing the public participation and trying to get the broadest input from the broadest number of people. And you were at the meeting in Anchorage, and I was at that meeting. They're welcoming input from everybody, and they're asking people to write on their maps what's missing and provide additional input. And you can't lead horses to water that don't come to meetings. You can advertise them. You can bring meetings to multiple places. If you have people that aren't coming and aren't participating, it's not because they're being excluded. And I think it's not fair to say that. So if you would like us to invite particular people that you think will come to meetings, the staff is more than happy to do that because the whole goal of this project is to do the best job of setting Whittier up for economic development for everybody that lives here. And one of the things that came out of those particular meetings we brought before council, which was the idea of allowing food vendors, because we do have a lot of local people who have, I don't want to say a lot. I mean, we only have a population of 273, but there's more than a handful of people who think that it's feasible, cost effective to open a food vendor truck, but they don't have probably the capital to open a bricks and mortar. So I really, I'm sorry. I just can't sit here and not say something because I really don't, you either haven't been a participant in the process and therefore don't know what's happened, or you're getting feedback from people who haven't participated, because everyone that has participated has said what a robust, great public process this is, and I second that. So thank you for letting me.
So, and I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong, but on these focus groups, when I called locals, some of them were, they operated businesses, and I said, well, how did you get invited? And they were contacted by phone, and I didn't. And then I was contacted by phone for the transportation focus group. But I didn't see the focus groups posted. They may have been put online, but I didn't see them posted.
If I might add, Mr. Mayor, thank you for giving me an opportunity. So Corvus Design reached out to a massive list of people that Scott, myself, and other people put together and said, these are players in Whittier. And Linda called me about 2 days prior to this week-long, focus group discussion, and we hadn't heard back from a lot of people. So I did get on the phone, and I spent 2 days, all day, calling all these individuals and saying, hey, we've got this going on. You were identified as a stakeholder. We want your input. That's why they got phone calls, because they didn't respond to the emails. So that's why I was reaching out to all of the individuals and all these focus groups to encourage them to call in and get involved.
So you used emails and phones. Did we publicly post these
Absolutely, we
focus
did.
groups?
Yes, we put them on.
On the
put 'em
bulletin board?
Yes, yep. We had QR codes. We had on bulletin boards. We had it on the web. Yeah, yes. So, and then we had our PAC, our action committee that we reached out to have them get a hold of people as well. So we cast a very, very wide net. We didn't leave anybody out. My staff was involved with getting people to the room. So I feel very confident that we've done an outstanding job reaching out to all of the players. And if they failed to show up, like I said, you can't drag a horse to water.
Excellent.
But
so I apologize.
So
I thought I had when they contacted me for transportation, I asked about the others, and I think I might have misunderstood what the lady said.
Mayor, with you taking personal input from people, did you direct them to administration so that we may answer questions or get them involved? Because that there inhibits the process. If you're just answering, you weren't involved knowing what's going on. You should direct them to administration so that administration can plug them in, get them to fit in, make sure that their voices are heard.
And I have to just add to that. I agree. While I on the master transportation plan portion, like it's not the waterfront development plan, but even the organization Dow and the state of Alaska said that this was the best public input for a community our size that they had ever seen. And they even took from those meetings, the public meeting here and the public meeting in Anchorage, and said, we're going to use sort of this same type of information so that and stakeholders list so that we can also get that same type of input on your transportation plan. And I have to say, and I agree with Director Corby, when somebody contacts you and you, as a council member, you all talk, that's really great, but we don't know who these people are. They haven't called us. And so I would love for anybody to reach out to anybody, any city employee, because every Tuesday we have a meeting. Every Tuesday we talk about all of our plans. And every Tuesday we've opened up the ability for anybody from the public to come into those meetings and give us anything that they're questioning or needing, because then you have your entire administrative staff. And so it's concerning to me. I mean, we could go and knock on everybody's door, but we not only posted it on every bulletin board and sent out the notices, but on our social media. And anybody who lives here in Whittier knows that you all thrive on social media. You can't miss the posts that the city of Whittier does to support the citizens to get them involved.
Okay, so I don't want to beat this to death, but I will say that in January, I didn't get that kind of feedback. I'm almost certain that a director, now you weren't there, but it's recorded. One of the directors said that to have what I was talking about would cost more money, and that maybe they needed to come before council with additional funds. So
I'm going to say right now, what director? What director, Mr. Blair? Because I want to know what the preface of the entire conversation. What was it that you wanted that they said that was more money?
To not have focus groups, but to call to not post it and to call them directly. But I mean, I'll look at the YouTube and I'll find out.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being defensive. I really don't mean to. I just, this is a huge project that I just really, it's phenomenal what is happening.
That's awesome. I know when we did the 2019 comprehensive plan that a lot of the contact was by email, and email is not the same thing as posting. And
But we did cover every single base. We added to, I mean, and we do that because we are a small community. We 3.5 years ago, you barely posted it. You didn't even have a city webpage. I mean, you had a city webpage, but you didn't have a city manager or a city focused social media presence. In 3.5 years, we've created a social media presence that reaches beyond Whittier. So I just encourage any citizen, anybody that wants to have input in any type of committee and any type of thing, and anybody that contacts your council, please just know to contact also your administration, your concerns. We want to be able to answer them. We want to be able to help them. And we want to be able to make sure that the council succeeds as well as the community.
I absolutely want administration to succeed, and sounds like I need to improve my communication. So I apologize to administration for what might be false accusations. I'll check the YouTube channel. So moving on, we've got informational items. Is there anything that needs to be brought forward?
No, Mayor.
So moving to council comments.
Actually, I do want to recant that. I would like to point out that informational item report G, 10G, is transportation plan request for participation in a community, an advisory committee, or topic-based focus group. So that is, like I said earlier, I want to make sure the public knows that this is the point in time where we're going to start reaching out for those type of advisory committees based for the transportation plan.
So TMP is asking for participation in an advisory committee?
No, this is not the TPMP. This is this is your master transportation plan. This is the Dow Group that is working on the state DOT transportation plan. They're looking at creating committees and focus groups to start moving forward to start the processes on that transportation plan.
So item G,
Yes.
and that's the one that you were bringing up.
Yeah, I just, if anybody who's watching and anybody that is playing it back, those things are going to start coming forward. There will be an application and they'll contact just as, the other waterfront economic development plan is done, and they'll be basing off creating these focus groups and stakeholder groups. So anybody that's interested in the master transportation plan, please contact the administration, and we will page 232, and we will gladly help with any questions and get everybody that is really interested in transportation in the right focus group.
Awesome.
Mr. Mayor, just letting you know I'm signing off.
All right. Thanks for being on council. So in the council comments, does anybody have any council comments? Andre? Well, let me finish council comments first, and then we'll get into citizens discussion. So currently we have a TMP resolution that lists stakeholders, but it specifically lists Huna Totem And it doesn't list any of the other stakeholders. And I think we've got some we have companies that are comparable in size to Huna Totem that are having or will have significant impact to our community. And I'd like to bring forward a resolution that would supersede the current TMP resolution. And I'd like to ask council if I could bring that forward for the month of April.
Madam Clerk, what's the process here for presentation of a resolution?
Honestly, I'd ask for an at ease so that I could pull up that resolution that dictates how resolutions are brought forward, if that's all right.
I remember at one point that we were told that.
Yes, that's what I'd like to cite from, but
All
I just
right,
need a
very
moment to pull it up. Thank you.
Mayor and council, if I have the ability, could I speak on that? So I might be able to add some clarity, not to what the resolution says, but Mr. Blair, Mayor Blair, I know that you were talking about the TMP, which is the transportation master plan. And it listed certain stakeholders and not other stakeholders, but I know that you have attended one of the transportation plan meetings, but that's sort of just a placeholder. And yes, I know that not everybody's listed in it in the whereases, but at the same time, it does say all stakeholders in Whittier. And while you are more than able and capable and council can bring forward a resolution to add more people, you did cover it in the whereases because it does say all stakeholders of Whittier. And at the same time, the Dow Group has already started that massive stakeholder list. So, if you want to write a resolution, great, but you already have it in the resolution. And I know that it listed specifics, but you did cover in that the majority of the stakeholders of Whittier.
Yeah, I don't have the list in front of me, but one of the things that I would like for this transportation master plan to consider is some of the congestion points that we have in our community for the sake of safety and the possibility of those 4 lots at the Whittier staging area and the relocation of or at least the consideration of the relocation of the Alaska Marine Highway. It would make a huge improvement in the congestion down by the launch ramp. And that would also make it much, much easier for us in terms of a community in developing Shotgun Cove Road.
And those things are all things that are already on the table. You discussed them when we had the very first meeting, and Dow Group already added those type of things. We discussed that.
I haven't been. I think Peter went. I didn't go. It was the same week as AML, and I didn't go.
You were there. No, he wasn't. I apologize, Mr. Blair. See, I'm looking at both of you. I don't have my glasses on. Peter, you were there, right? on the transportation plan meeting with Dow when we were on Anchorage.
The initial planning to plan meeting.
Yeah. So I can tell you that those things are in that plan, and I can send you the invite for the next Dow catch up and next steps. I'll make sure that you're invited to that meeting, Mr. Blair.
Okay.
But again, you can
don't-
write a resolution,
Yeah.
but I can try to
probably-
save you from
yeah.
have to writing one.
I probably don't have a lot to say in those meetings, but it would help me track what's going on.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that you have that today.
And then I had one more item on council comments, and that is in Title III. I'd like to bring forward just a very small change to the tool set that council would use when considering, we're fixing to do a land lease, I can't remember the exact phrase, but lease allocation, land lease allocation. And right now, anyway, there's some more tools that I'd like to bring forward. And it's, most of my amendments are like one sentences. So what I'd like to do is just bring it forward. And then if council likes it, let's keep it. And if council doesn't like it, then it doesn't go forward.
Mayor, can I ask that maybe you work with me to look what that looks like so that we can clarify it before it goes even to your council? I have no
Sure.
problem working with you on
I've
it.
got it written. I'll just
Okay.
send it to you.
So we'll just do it. We'll do it at one of our meetings, but I think that way, then we're moving forward through the administration council working together and then bringing it forward to help the understanding.
That sounds great.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Andre, sorry for the delay there, sir.
A member of the council as well as the listening audience. Just want to remind people regarding last month, there was a lot of stuff on Mount Spur eruption, stuff like that. So just some preventive aspects. The American Red Cross of Alaska's Facebook site is a phenomenal source of information on some preparatory stuff for personal protective equipment, especially for individuals working outside. The last time it erupted, a lot of ash fell in South Central Alaska, interior Alaska, down the peninsula. What I was told historically, I wasn't in this part of Alaska in 92, 93 when it happened. I was in another part, but that Whittier didn't get affected as much. But it's still a good idea for people that are working outside to ensure that they have N95 masks. If they wear glasses, safety glasses. If they wear contacts, at least goggles, long sleeve shirts, stuff like that. And if they drive vehicles, ensure that you have extra air filters and stuff like that. If you're an individual with some respiratory issues, make sure, because of the highway, depends on what time of year this will probably happen, make sure you have your supply of any type of inhalers or medications and things of that nature. But if you go on Facebook, the American Red Cross of Alaska has a lot of good information on there. If you have any questions, feel free to contact myself or Chief Gates. Already we've discussed with all the other directors for employees outside as to their PPEs they need as well. But any questions, please contact us or go to that site. Thank you.
So I heard, I don't know if it's a wives' tale or not, or they're just trying to get me to buy pantyhose, but if you put pantyhose on the intake of your air filter, you get more bang for the buck.
That is what I was told as well. Apparently that works for the U.S. military in high dust areas as well. So that I was told that works. But yeah.
Thank you, Andre. Any more citizen discussion?
No one is signed in.
Okay. All right. I ask for a motion for adjournment.
Mayor, if I can just say one thing, I just want to thank the mayor and council and all my administrative staff. I am so proud of what we accomplished tonight on this agenda. Good job on the grants, good job on the move forward. So just thank you.
There being no further business, the meeting appears to be adjourned at 10:25 p.m.